Ladies and gentlemen, konbanwa, good evening. My name is Peter Leary. I'm the Deputy Head of Mission at the Embassy of Ireland in Tokyo. I'd like to start by just thanking you all very much for coming to join us this evening at this e-literature festival event, Echoes from Western Europe's Shores. I'm really delighted to be here on behalf of the Embassy and to introduce Irish poet Paula Meehan, who's here to participate in the festival and to mark the launch of her new Japanese translation of her latest poetry collection, As If by Magic. I'd like to congratulate her on the book's publication and also the eminent translation team, all of whom are here this evening, and we're going to hear from them shortly too. Thanks to their efforts and the support of the publishers Shishosha and Literature Ireland, we're looking forward to sharing this really special evening with you this evening. Paula Meehan is one of Ireland's foremost poets. She's published 7 solo poetry collections and 2 volumes of selected poetry, including this evening's works, As If by Magic. She's held the prestigious Ireland Chair of Poetry from 2013 to 2016. Her many awards include the Martin Tunder Award, the Butler Literary Award, the Lawrence O'Shaughnessy Award, and the PPI Award for Radio Drama. She collaborates frequently with practitioners across many genres. She's written poetry for film and for dance, and songwriters have put her poetry to music. She's travelled extensively and has a special connection with Japan. This is her second time to visit Japan, and we hope she'll come back again to help continue building those links. As many of you will know, Ireland and Japan have very strong literary links, and our poetry tradition in particular has many admirers in this country, going back to the work of W.B. Yeats, Seamus Heaney, and many more. Recently, contemporary novelists such as Colin Tugby and Sally Rooney, as well as dramatists like Conor McPherson and Martin McDonagh, have become popular and are also now available in Japanese. Also in this festival, there will be a panel discussion later on Ulysses, which this year marks the 100 years of its publication. This evening, we'll hear some of the poems read by the author herself and by each of the translators. After the presentation, there will be a book signing of the new publication, as well as by the latest novelist by the Portuguese representative, Mr. Peixoto, if I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. So thank you very much from the Embassy and from all of us here to the EU delegation and our EU partners for coordinating and making this event possible. Thank you also to Paula for travelling out from Ireland to represent us so well. Thank you to Professor Ono, who helped translate and will also chair the discussion, and also to Aoyama Book Centre for this facilitating this event and providing this wonderful space. I hope you will all enjoy the evening. Thank you very much.
人が変わるとマイクを変える衛星上ということですので、私は違うマイクで話させていただきます。皆さんこんばんは。今回私がしゃべる最初は日本語でさせていただきますが、この翻訳に携わったすべての人々、つまり詩人のポーラ・ミーハン、共同翻訳者の栃木信明、山田久美子、川口和子、河合理恵、そして発行者である視聴者を代表して私、大野光子が会場にお集まりくださった皆様にお礼を申し上げるとともに、この新しい翻訳詩集、まるで魔法のようにご紹介をさせていただきます。今夜は皆様にアイルランドで行われているポエトリーコンサートの体験もしていただきたいと、ここからはポーラさんと呼ばせていただきますけれども、彼女が英語の詩を朗読し、翻訳者たちも各々が訳した詩を朗読、アイリッシュハープ奏者の中康子さんによる伴奏付きの朗読もあるという趣向になっています。今ほどご挨拶くださったミヤディさんがディスカッションとおっしゃったんですけど、このセッションではディスカッションではなくて、できるだけたくさん詩の朗読を、声の朗読を聞いていただきたいと思っています。 でもまず先に詩集そのもののご紹介から始めます。これが詩集の外観ですが、表紙を飾っているのはポーラさん自身の描いた絵、2枚の絵です。デザイナーの井原さんが本の題名と内容にふさわしいおしゃれな想定をしてくださいました。実は元となる、英語詩集、ダブリンのデダラスプレスによる「As if by magic」、この表紙を飾るのも実はポーラさんの描かれた絵なんですね。詩を描くのみならず絵も描くという大変多彩な詩人でいらっしゃるのがポーラさんです。署名は英語版も日本語版も同じなのですけれども、実は日本語の詩集に収録されている詩の数はオリジナルよりもはるかに少なくなっています。オリジナルの188編に比べてわずか60編です。詩の数という点だけで考えると、英語で読めるあるいは読みたい読者にはオリジナルの方がお値打ちかもしれません。しかしこの日本語訳詩集にはオリジナルにはない重要な5編の詩が追加されているほかに、ポーラさん自身による日本の読者へのメッセージ、ポーラさんの経歴、作品の評価、そして詩の解説など、翻訳者たちが心を込めて用意した情報も収録されておりますので、充実した内容ですから価値は高いと信じております。そもそもそれだけの私たち翻訳者たちが時間と労力をかける、費やす価値のある素晴らしい詩人こそがポーラ・ミーハンさんですと信じてした仕事です。でもじゃあなぜ英語版と日本語版の訳同じタイトルをつけたのでしょうか。理由はコロナ禍のさまざまな障害の中で詩の翻訳作業を進めていた2021年夏にポーラさんからこの分厚い詩集が届いたんですね。そしてその署名「As if my magic」が当初私たちが考えていた題名よりも断然良かったからです。そこで日本語版に収録されている詩の数は少なくても題名にふさわしい詩集にしたいと私たちは考えました。まず日本語版の編集担当の河合理恵は、私はこの小道を知っている、目ではなく魔法の力でから始まる泉を冒頭に置き、それ以後の詩を周到に配置することによって詩集で読み手に魔法をかける試みをいたしました。ポーラさんには日本の読者のために序文を寄せてほしいとお願いしました。すると寄せられた文章から実は子供の頃から彼女がどれほど日本に心を寄せてきたかが分かりました。こうして日本語訳詩集が出ることはポーラさんにとっても運命の魔法だったようです。そして本の想定のためにポーラさんにオリジナル版の絵を提供してくれないかと打診をしましたところ、代わりにすぐさま最新作の数枚がインターネットで送られてきました。満月と三日月を描いた2枚を私たちは選んだのですが、想定の江原さんがその2つを組み合わせて、誠にまるで魔法のような世界観をここの表紙に実現をしてくださったと思います。でも最後で最大の魔法は、詩集がいよいよ書店に出るタイミングで突然ポーラさんの来日が決まったという知らせが届いたことです。それがこのヨーロッパ文芸フェスティバルの参加で今夜の朗読会となったのでした。ですから私の話はここまでにして、彼女とこの詩集が日本の新しいお友達に出会う魔法の時間を始めることにしましょう。どうぞお楽しみください。と言っておりごめんなさい、実はですね、ちょっと英語の補足をしたいと思います。For the listeners who would have liked to hear my introduction in English, I would just say that the two books here of the same title, As if by magic, each have merits of their own. The English original has far more poems, 188 in number, but our book which consists of 60 poems, including important 5 poems, which is not in the original, and which you will also hear later today, and much more additional information such as Paula's message for Japanese readers, her biography and bibliography, plus research commentaries, etc. So it is even better, I say, perhaps. We gave the same title to a book and also a magical power to this edition by arranging the poems starting with the poem Well, which starts, I know this path by magic, not by sight. And then by the magical book cover design of 2 paintings by Paula herself. Then, later on, another magical card. Paula came to Japan by the invitation of the EU Literature Festival. So, please enjoy the last but not least magic the poet and translators offer this evening. Thank you very much.
So this is quite an occasion for me. Thank you, Peter Nearly, for the lovely introduction. I appreciate it so much. And I especially appreciate the help of the embassy. Aisling Braden of the embassy has been guiding me around Tokyo. Otherwise, I would be just lost in space, let alone lost in translation. So I'm delighted. Oh, I think the sound is just, this is a kind of magic. I have a terrible effect on technology, and it has a terrible effect on me, I can assure you. So it's great to be here and to thank in person to thank my translators, because to undertake the journey, and it's a few years in the making, to undertake that journey to go inside somebody else's head is quite a job, and it involves a surrender of self. I know myself, I translate on a small scale, and I know the kind of surrender you have to give to somebody else's consciousness. So I really appreciate it. This journey into translation completes a loop that would have started very early for me when I was a young poet. And I first discovered Japan, not through the usual way of looking to the East, although certainly through W.B. Yeats there would have been a massive influence there, especially in his plays, but through the American gaze across the Pacific, that generation of West Coast American poets who looked to Japan. So it really was through those early influences, part of the zeitgeist that came to Ireland with rock and roll and other popular movements of my youth, that I first encountered a particular idea of Japan. One of my earliest influences, and the person to whom this book is dedicated, the Japanese edition, is the American poet Gary Snyder. He's still alive, 92 years of age, living in California. And I would have first encountered his work in the 70s, and in particular a poem, What You Should Know to Be a Poet, which begins, all you can about animals as persons, your own 6 senses with a watchful and elegant mind, at least one kind of traditional magic. So I feel that this is a completion of a huge loop that started when I was a very young teenager in Dublin. So for so many reasons I am grateful to my translators for bringing me into Japanese. You will get to hear, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the voices of each of the translators here tonight. So I'm going to read a poem, and then they will come and read the Japanese translation. I'll give a very brief introduction to each poem. The first poem it's called The Man Who Was Marked by Winter. And I wrote it out of the experience of living. Yes. Oh yes, no, I thought we changed it. We changed it back again. Okay, you see I'm out of some of the loops. Okay, so we start with a poem of my childhood, growing up right in the centre of Dublin. And it's about those times as a child, the first time when you're kind of let out into the world on your own. I think in Dublin, in those days, it probably happened a lot earlier. As children, we were given a lot more independence, a lot younger than now, where the children are protected, I think, a lot more in certain ways. Certainly now you wouldn't allow a child of 6 or 7 to wander out into the middle of the city. And it celebrates really those women who went out to the seashore and gathered the little periwinkles, which look like snails, like sea snails, but they gather them at low tide, bring them back to the centre of the city and boil them up and sell them to make some what was called pin money. So to have some money for themselves and sometimes even to support their families. So this poem remembers those early journeys as a child, being let out into the city on my own, and the beginning of a journey out into the world. So buying winkles. My mother would spare me sixpence and say, hurry up now and don't be talking to strange men on the way. I'd dash from the ghosts on the stairs where the bulb had blown out into Gardner Street, all relief. A bonus if the moon was in the strip of sky between the tall houses or stars out. But even in rain, I was happy. The winkles would be wet and glisten blue like little night skies themselves. I'd hold the tanner tight and jump every crack in the pavement. I'd wave up to women at sills or those lingering in doorways and weave a glad path through men heading out for the night. She'd be sitting outside the Rose Bowl bar on an orange crate, a pram loaded with pails of winkles before her. When the bar doors swung open, they'd leak the smell of men together with drink, and I'd see ghosts in golden mirrors. I envied each soul in the hot interior. I'd ask her again to show me the right way to do it. She'd take a pin from her shawl. Open the eyelid, so stick it in till you feel a grip, then slither him out. Gently, mind, the sweetest extra winkle that brought the sea to me. Tell your ma I picked them fresh this morning. I'd bear the newspaper twists, bulging fat with winkles, proudly home like torches. So I'll pass over to my translator, Kazuko, now to read the Japanese version of that poem. So.
巻貝を買いに、母さんが私に6ペンス硬貨を渡しながら言った。さあ、急いでお行き。途中で知らない人に話しかけたりしないこと。電球が切れた階段をお化けに遭わないよう急いで駆け下り、ガーディナー通りに出たらほっと一安心。高い家々の屋根の隙間から見える空に月が見えたら儲けもの。星が出てたってそうだ。雨でも私は幸せ。だって巻貝がまるで夜空のように濡れて青く輝くんだから。 6ペンス硬貨をぎゅっと握りしめ、歩道の割れ目を一つずつ飛び越えて、敷居のところにいる女たちや戸口にたむろする人たちに手を振りながら、飲みに行く男たちの間を縫うようにウキウキと走っていく。あの人はいつもローズボールバーの外の橙色の木枠に座っていた。前には巻き貝入り手桶をどっさり乗せた乳母車。バーのドアがさっと開くたびに、お酒と男たちの匂いが漏れて、金色の鏡に映る光が見える。暖かい部屋の中にいる人たち皆が羨ましかったな。もう一回ちゃんとしたやり方を見せてよ、と頼んだ。あの人はピンをショールから外してこう言った。蓋を開けること。そう、手応えがあるまでぐいっとピンを突き刺す。それからねじって出す。いいかい？そーっとだよ。おまけにくれたとびきり甘い巻き貝が海を私に運んできてくれた。母さんに伝えておくれ。今朝取ったばかりの生きのいい巻き貝だって。私は巻き貝で膨らんだ新聞紙をねじった包みを松明みたいに掲げながら誇らしく家に帰った。
すみません、先ほどポーラさんが詩の紹介をしてくださっているところは全然通訳しないままに行ってしまいましたけれども、実はおっしゃってくださったことの大半はこの本の中の例えば序文であるとか解説に書いてありますので、もし特に関心がおありになることがありましたらまた後にお読みいただけたらと思います。で、この詩の紹介の部分はもう日本語の翻訳を読んでいただきましたから皆さんには伝わったかと思うんですけれども、ポーラさんが子供だった頃、日本にも確かそういえば子供のお使いをテーマにしたテレビ番組があったと思うんですけど、その小さな子供が夜お母さんの代わりにお買い物に行くっていう大変な冒険ですね。買ってくるものは、貧しい人が女の人が朝取ったばかりの巻き貝を、茹でて、そして乳母車に乗せて街中に持ってきて、夜みんなが来る頃にそれを売ってという、小遣い稼ぎというか生活費の最低を稼ぐためにする、それを買いに行った子供の一夜の冒険の詩でした。はい、では
Yes, yes, fantastic. Thank you very much, Mitsuko. Okay, this poem is called "The Man Who Was Marked by Winter," and I got it in New Hampshire, in north of Boston, in the States, when I was a writer in residence in a place called the Frost Place. It was where Robert Frost, the American poet, had lived. When he came back from England in 1916, and he moved to this farm, a small farm, a mountain farm, quite far off, the road, Ridge Road, outside Franconia in New Hampshire. And I spent a month there in May. Even though it was May, it was up in the White Mountains, the Appalachian Range, and it was still in the shadowed part of the landscape. There was still ice, still melting. And one day out for a walk, I saw an emergency crew down at the river, the Wild Ammonoosuc River. And I went down to see what they were doing. And a young man, a beautiful young man's body had been washed down by the snow melt from the higher mountain. So that it gave me this poem.
今の詩に説明にあったように、この詩はポーラさんがWriter in Residence という形で、要するにアメリカやアイルランドやイギリスではあることですけれども、ライターがそこの場所に滞在して、その間に詩を作るとか、作品を書くとかっていう、そういうシステムですけれども、それでフロストプレイスというところにニューハンプシャー、 で滞在しておられた時にできたこの詩だそうですが、それはロバート・フロストが滞在していたその場所がそういうレジデンスの場所ということで、彼女に与えられたわけですね。で、ある時そのブライダル・フォールズって花嫁のベールですね、花嫁のベールという名前のついた滝を、彼女が歩いていこうとしている時、それ5月で結構暑い時期だったんですけれども、突然先にですね救急車が現れて、何が起こったかというと、若い男性が、川で溺れてそれを連れ出した、その事件があったので、つまり5月は雪解け、ニューイングランドって寒いですからね、5月はまだやっと雪解けが、その雪解けからその若い男がなぜ溺れたかわからない、それを詩にした。次は冬の刻印を押された男、The man who was marked by winter。
The man who was marked by winter. He was heading for Bridal Veil Falls, an upward slog on the dusty path, mid-May and hot as a millstone grinding his shoulders, his back. Each breath was a drowning. And who's to say if it was a mirage, the other side of the creek's brown water? He saw it, that's enough, in the deep shade of a rocky overhang, the spoor of winter, a tracery of ice. If we'd reached him, we'd have warned him of the depths, the secret current underneath. He must have been half crazy with the heat. He stripped off, waded in, his feet were cut from under him. He was swept down river in melt water from the mountain. She clutched him to her breast, that beast of winter. One look from her agate eyes, and he abandoned hope. He was pliant. She pulled him under. If she had him once, she had him thrice. She shook his heart and mind asunder, and he would willingly have gone back to her palace or her lair, whichever, whatever she was. He would have lived forever in her realms of ice. She must have grown tired of his human ways. We found him tossed like a scrap on the bank, hours or years or seconds later. His eyes stared straight at the sun. His past is a blank snowfield where no one will step. She made her mark below his heart, a 5-fingered gash. Bondsman.
冬の刻印を受けた男。ブライダルベール滝へと男は向かっていた。重い足取りで土ぼこりの上がる上り坂を。5月の半ばを過ぎ、両肩や背中はまるで引き寄せにすりつぶされているような暑さ。一息ごとに溺れるほどの息苦しさ。その時、小川の濁流を越えた対岸に見えたのは幻影だったか、今さらわかるはずもない。男は見てしまったのだ。それで十分。突き出した岩棚の下の暗い影の中に、冬の痕跡、氷の透かし彫りを。もしも追いついていたなら私たちが彼に教えただろう。川の深さと水底の危険な流れを。暑さのせいで頭もおかしくなっていたに違いない。男は服を脱ぎ捨てて水の中へと歩み入った。流れに足をすくわれた男を山の雪解け水が川下へと押し流した。彼を胸元に抱き寄せたのは女。あの冬の獣。女の目のの瞳に見つめられ、男は諦めた。言いなりになる男。女が男を押し倒す。一旦気に入ったなら女は男を幾度も味わったはず。女が男の本能と理性を真っ二つに裂いた。だから男は喜んで戻っていったことだろう。女の宮殿へ、 あるいは彼女の寝床へと。正体が何であろうと女の支配する氷の王国で永遠に暮らすことを彼は望んだはず。きっと女が飽きてしまったからに違いない人間の男のやり方に。川岸に投げ捨てられている彼を私たちが見つけたのは数時間後か数年後、それとも数秒後だったか。男の目はまっすぐに太陽を見つめていた。男の過去は誰も足を踏み入れない真っ白な雪原。心臓の下に残る女の刻印、指5本分の切り傷で男奴隷。
So this poem was largely, the next poem, it's called Dream Filter, and it was largely inspired, I suppose is the word, by the Native American dream catchers, you know, that are home for, here's one here, we baked earlier. So these are ceremonial, symbolic, and also may have a reality that they do actually catch dreams or filter dreams. Some people have said, because I've asked people who are from the native traditions, some people say they filter out the bad dreams and protect the dreamer from bad dreams. Other people say that they filter in good dreams. Maybe it's the same thing. But they are seen as protective objects, or to ritualize an idea of protection. So in my poem, I ritualize an idea of protection around a child, a newborn. And often, you know, in my culture, when we were children, often you would have medals or other things around the crib, around the cradle, to protect the child. And I saw that in every culture I've gone to. In Greece, I see they put and in Turkey indeed, they put the eye to ward off the evil eye. This idea of protection interests me hugely in all kinds of ways. So this was the person in the poem, the woman in the poem is not sure why she's doing this, because it's not, a dream catcher is not part of Irish culture, except in the popular sense now, kind of a new age idea. But so I'm interested in why people ritualize their anxieties. So we didn't rehearse.
これはぶっつけ本番です。今お話ししていらっしゃるのがこれちょっとお見せしましたけど、ネイティブアメリカンの文化にある伝統的な子どものお守りでドリームキャッチャーというそうですけれども、そのドリームキャッチャーというのは要するに一つは夢のこれをフィルターとして使って悪い夢をこうしてもらっていい夢だけが来る、あるいはいい夢を掴んでここに来るっていう、要するにお守りはお守りなんですね。で子供の体を守るためのお守りとしてアメリカに北米のネイティブの方たちが持ってるんですけど、どんな文化の中にも子供のその安全な成長を願うっていう、それはいろんな習慣でつながっていて、でこの詩の中の女性は要はアイルランドの女性なんだけれども、アイルランドの伝統的な、例えば金属をベッドのところにぶら下げるとかそういうのではなくて、なんか新しい話だけれども、このドリームキャッチャーっていうのをやってみようって思った、それがこの詩で表現されています。
So whether the dream filters out the bad dreams or lures the good dreams, I don't think even the person in the poem knows. Before you were born, I made a dream filter to ensure you clear dreamings for the whole of your childhood, to the exact specifications of a tribe I read about in National Geographic. First, to clear my own dreams and pass all my bad visions into stones, then go on foot to pure, swift, running water near where it entered the sea, and cast each weighted stone to the pebbly bed where they could be washed to a calm stonedness again. Only then was I fit to begin. The finding of coppiced hazel, the twisting of hempen twine, the building of the dream filter itself took a full 7 months. Wait for a bird to gift you some feathers. On the walk to the hospital, down by the South Docks, after a night spent in labour, 3 slate grey feathers there in my path. I looked up and saw a peregrine falcon hung in the air, one of a pair that were nesting on top of the gasometer. This contraption, made of hazel and hemp and a few tail feathers, is fixed tonight above your cradle. One day you'll ask, what's it all about? And what can I tell you? What can I possibly say?
夢のフィルター。あなたが生まれる前に、私はドリームキャッチャーを作りました。子供のあなたが大人になるまでずっと安らかな夢を見続けられるようにと、ナショナルジオグラフィックで読んだある部族に伝わる作り方にきっちりと合わせたのです。最初に私は自分の夢をきれいにして悪いビジョンのすべてを石の中に移し入れなければなりませんでした。それから澄んだ流れの速い川が海に注ぎ込む場所の近くまで歩いていって、悪い夢で重たくなった石を一つ一つ小石で敷き詰められた川底へと投げ入れました。そうして石たちは現れて、再び穏やかな石の性質を取り戻すことができ、私はその時ようやくあなたの母親にふさわしくなれたのです。雑木林の下草からハシバミを見つけ出し、浅い糸をねじり合わせてドリームキャッチャーを作り上げるのにかかったのがまるで7ヶ月。鳥もお待ちなさい。あなたに羽をくれるから。サウスドックスを通って歩いて病院へ行く途中、陣痛で一夜苦しんだ後のこと、目の前に灰色の羽が3枚落ちていました。見上げるとはやぶさが空に漂っているのが見えました。ガスタンクの上で巣を作っていたつがいのうちの1羽が落としたのです。ハシバミと浅い糸と尾羽2、3枚で作ったこの奇妙な細工を今夜あなたのゆりだこの上に取り付けましょう。いつかあなたは尋ねるでしょう。それは一体何なのかと。その時私は何と言えるかしら。あなたに一体何を話すことができるのかしら。
Thank you, Kumiko, for that. Yeah, I love the way, which I could see there as Kumiko read, I love the way the lines fall. We had this conversation about the specific gravity of lines in Japanese towards the different kind of leveling lines in English. So it's wonderful to see the voice follow that specific gravity down the page. So this is a poem called, it's an extract from a longer poem that Rie translated, and the longer poem, it's called The Wounded Child, and I wrote it after a conversation with a woman. I spent many years working in the Irish prison system. It was a scheme organised by our Arts Council that sent poets into the prisons. Some people would, of course, remark, as being Ireland, that we should be kept there. So over the course of my life, I've worked in all the prisons of the state, with in the male prisons, with the women prisoners, during the time of our troubles in the north, with the political prisoners, and really that was a privilege. You know, I think it taught me things that I couldn't learn any other way, to bring poetry into the prisons and to be affirmed, to be so affirmed by people who had no liberty, and also to find in their work, to find mirrorings of the outside culture. So it was my finishing school were the prisons of Ireland. I know Mitsuko, I'm going to say now Mitsuko will explain all that. Don't worry.
Sorry. So can I start? 日本の詩人がそういうことをしてらっしゃるか分かりません。これは今私の個人的なコメンタリーですけれど、アイルランドでポーラさんを含めて詩人たちが囚人として、監獄に入れられている人たちに対してポエトリーワークショップをポエトリーアイランドというところから派遣して実施するっていうシステムがあって、ポーラさん自身はもう随分長くそれをしてらして、アイルランド国中の全てのいわゆる監獄ですか、刑務所というところに出かけていって、そこにいる人たちと、一緒に仕事をする。そうするとそこにいた囚人の人たちがポーラさんの詩に対してすごくいい反応をしてくださると同時に、彼らの作った詩をワークショップで見ていて、そうすると詩人としてですね、彼らの経験が自分自身にとっては普通にはどこでも理解できない、知ることもできないような内容を与えてくれる。それを自分の詩の中で改めて声にして、詩を書くという機会を与えてくれる。そのような詩の一つ。
So, as I said, this is an extract from a longer poem. So many of the people I worked with revealed to me the woundedness of their childhood. So, somewhere in the girl you once were is the wounded child. Find her. You have to find her. She is lonely, terrified, curled to a fetal grip in a tight place, sobbing her heart out. The world is a man with big hands and sharp teeth. The world is a ton of bricks, sand in her mouth, a huge weight on her chest. She has no breath to speak of it. Her fate is unwritten, silent, mute. Remember her splitting apart. Tell her truth. Pick her up, go on. Hold her close to you, hold her to your breast. If you cannot find the words at first, hum the tune. They will come eventually, like a spell or a prayer. They are already there.
傷ついた子供、かつて女の子だったあなたの中に傷ついた子供がいる。その子を探し出して見つけてあげなくちゃ。その子は一人ぼっちで怯えている。胎児のように狭い場所で丸くなり、胸が張り裂けそうに泣いている。世界は大きな手と鋭い歯をした男。世界は一トンのレンガ。口 口に砂を詰められたその子の胸にとてつもない重しをかけている。その子は息ができなくて何も話せない。その子の運命は記録もされず沈黙し声にもならない。その子のこと覚えてるでしょ。その子がバラバラに裂かれたこともその子の真実を伝えて、その子を助けに行って、さあその子を抱き上げてあなたの胸で抱きしめて、もし最初は言葉が見つからなければメロディーを口ずさんでみて、やがて言葉も出てくるはず。おまじないや祈りのように言葉はもうあなたの中にある。
This is the poem that tried to escape from me. Thank you, Ria, for that beautiful translation. I don't know what it was like to translate. It was a very hard poem to write because of the material and the violence of the material. So I appreciate all of the translations. So this poem is called Thunder in the House, and it looks at episodes from my childhood in the centre of Dublin, not far from where the first poem I read, Buying Winkles, not far from where that poem was set. And I grew up in a strange acoustic. I grew up on the corner of Sean McDermott Street and Gardner Street. So the acoustic there in an apartment, a flat we would call it, an apartment, was strange because of Sean McDermott was one of our revolutionary patriots who was executed by the British for his part in the Easter Rising of 1916, and the street was called after him. And the other street, we were on the corner, the other street was called after Luke Gardner, who was one of our Georgian developers who developed the Georgian architecture of the north side of Dublin City. So I felt like I was between the ascendancy rulers and the dispossessed revolutionaries. It's something I've tried to resolve all my life. But we do say about the streets called after the revolutionary dead that they are the streets where the poor live. So thunder in the house was what my mother called the noise above that shook the ceiling. I'm sorry, I've done it again. I'll be barred from this bookshop forever. I'm so sorry. Mortified.
一番最初に読んだ詩の子供時代の思い出、それは彼女自身が住んでた地域なんですけど、次に読む詩はそれからまた引っ越しをしたんですけど、同じような貧しい地域の通りで、この辺りに建っている建物というのは実は、ダブリン市内のストリートネームをちょっとはしょらせていただきますけれども、こちらは貧しい人たちの通り、こちらはもともとはイギリスからやってきたそのいわゆるアセンダンシーと言われるですね、人たちの通り、その狭間にあるようなそういう地域で、に残っている、貧しい人たちが住むエリアになってしまったその場所に住んでいた時に、自分のアパート、彼女が住んでいたアパートのいわゆる音ですね、上階や横から聞こえている音っていうのがとても、よく聞こえるというアコースティックエフェクトが非常に、強かった。でその中でできてきた詩で、彼女は自分のその住んでいたその土地がこの2つの道がクロスする場所だったので、自分自身のアイデンティティはこっちの方にあるのか、こっちの方にあるのか、つまり貧しい人たち、土着の人たちの方にあるのか、それとも英国側にあるのか、非常に一生ずっと考え続けているアイデンティティの問題でもあるということで、
It's seasonal, it's set at Christmas time. Thunder in the house was what my mother called the noise above that shook the ceiling, made the windows hum, not Jesus moving wardrobes, couches, beds, shifting heaven's furniture to help his mam when Jesus was a boy, not bold like us, was what she called the ructions in the flat above, when all hell broke loose, when for an hour or 2 or 3 or 4, until he fell asleep or headed out for more, we were the damned. Fridays were the worst. He'd come in roaring. She was cursed and soundly whacked. Sometimes we could even hear the individual smack of his hand on her cheek, but rarely words, no. Then, when the door would slam, weeping, I'd meet her sometimes on the stairs, bruised black and blue, or a stranger orange hue, thick smeared handstick on her 12-year-old face. I thought she was like the coal man's mangy dog, a sleeving bitch so used to beatings she'd slither at your ankles, belly low, waiting for the boot to drop. She robbed me of my message money, a slide from my plait, my blue scarf. I avoided her after that. My mother had no answers, or if she knew, was leaving well enough alone. My own father got cranky and threatened to settle his hash. God love her, they'd say, she has nobody else. It'd go even harder on her if anyone interfered. She disappeared one cold midwinter's day, the year I lost faith in Santa, though I stood scanning Gardner Street all Christmas Eve. The bulletins shouted back to the younger kids, a glimpse of his hood between chimneys, a snatch of red, with thunder in the house and shiny rain on all the roads, while from our plastered ceiling shook a fine fall of snow. So Nobuachi Toshigi, our old and good friend, who is a frequent visitor to Dublin and who miraculously and magically finished his revised edition of the collected poems of W.B. Yeats at my kitchen table. So I sometimes bow down to the table before I make breakfast. Nobby, as he is known in Ireland, wide and far, and known to the writers and musicians. So I'll pass you over to Nobby.
雷が家で鳴ってるよっていうのは、上の階の騒音が天井をガタガタ揺らして窓もブンブン鳴るもんだから母さんがそう呼んでたんだけど、それは私たちとは違っていい子のイエス様がママのお手伝いでタンスとかネイスとかベッドとか天の国の家具を引きずって模様替えしてる音じゃなくて、アパートの上の階で地獄の蓋が開いて1時間か2時間か3時間か4時間の間、あいつが眠ってしまうかもういっぺん飲みに出るまでの吸ったもんだを母さんがそう呼んでたわけ。聞かされる私たちも地獄にいた。あいつがわめきながら帰ってくる金曜日な地獄の底。娘は罵られひどくぶたれていた。あいつがあの子の頬に平手打ちを食らわす音がはっきり聞こえたこともあったけど、言葉はほとんど聞き取れなかった。で、バタンとドアが閉まると、あとはすすり泣き。時々階段ですれ違うと、あの子の顔に黒やら青やらもっと変な橙色のあざもできてて、まだ12歳なのに顔一面にシミ隠しをべったり塗っていたんだよ。石炭運びの人が連れてるみすぼらしい犬っているでしょ。蹴られてばっかりいるから ご主人様が足を下ろすまでくるぶしに哀れっぽくすがりつく犬。あの子そんな犬に似てた。お使いのお金を取られたことがあるんだ。三つ編みにつけてた髪留め、それに青いスカーフも。それからは避けるようにしてた。菅さんは何も言わなかった。っていうか、分かっててもそのまま放っておいた。うちの父さんは怒っちゃって、親父に仕返ししてやるぞって言った。他に身寄りがないんだもの。あの子に神様のお恵みをって言ったのは周囲の大人たち。でも口出しなんかしたらかえってこじれたに決まってる。あの子は冷たい真冬のある日にいなくなってしまった。あれは私がサンタを信じなくなった年だったけど、クリスマスイブはずっと窓からガーディナー通りを見張ってて、弟や妹たちには煙突の間にサンタさん見っけ、赤い服がちらっと見えたよって速報を叫んでた。家の中では雷が鳴ってて、外の道路は雨で光ってて、石膏塗りの天井からは細かい雪がちらちら降って
先ほどポーラさんがおっしゃった中で、ちょっと私が口を挟む時間がなかったんですけれども、クリコさんが読んでた時です。リエさんが読んでた時ですね、河合さんが。ポーラさんがちょっとおっしゃったのは、日本語の詩を朗読すると、日本語って縦書きですよね。その縦書きのこの流れるリズムっていうのがとても素敵という。で、英語のこのフラットな横のリズムとやっぱり違う気がするっておっしゃったんですね。でも今お聞きしてて、これは私の感想をごめんなさい。栃木さんの朗読は英語のこのポーラさんの朗読のリズムがそのまま横に表現されてるって気がしませんでしたか？ですよね。でもここから先はですね、ディスカッションではなくて、もっとポーラさんの声で詩を聞きたいと思いません？ですので、翻訳はどうぞ、もし余裕があったら買ってくださって、後で読んでください。で、英語だけでポーラさんの詩を時間が許す限り、アシュリンさん、どのくらい時間がありますか？10分ぐらい？ OK。では、OK、you have got 10 minutes to review in only English. The poem, your poem, yes, any poem that you feel like reading.
So this was a special request by Mitsuko that I read this poem, which is a kind of a kamal, what we would call a kamalia. You know, kamal, you people come in and sing, and it's a tribute to the song tradition of my country, where many of the traditional songs would shift as they moved from mouth to ear across the country. And you can track people often, and you hear song collectors and singers who will sit down and they'll trace a poem, they'll trace a song across the country, who gave it to them, where they got it from the first time, where it came from. So that interests me, the journey, a bit like the Aboriginal songlines, the journeys of songs. So I imagined if I was a blind woman, I would probably find the poem easier. If I imagined if I was a blind woman, that I would find my way home by this map of song and map of tune, by tracing it to the place I came to where the exact version of the poem, of the song or the poem, was the one that I knew, that I would know I was in my home place. So it's a kind of a ramble across the country, and it's called home, and I just want to thank the harpist who's not here. Oh, there you are. I just want to thank you for the magical music that was there. It was so subtle in the background, and the beautiful Irish harp. And we say in many of the old Irish stories, you have two kinds of magic that often presage a mysterious or a magical occasion or a transformation or a shape changing. You have Kyo Driakta, which is a kind of a magic mist, or Kyo Driakta, which is a magic tune or sound. So they're close, there's only one consonant difference, but so you could hear that kind of magic Kyo Driakta there in the beautiful playing, so thank you very much. So home. I am the blind woman finding her way home by a map of tune. When the song that is in me is the song I hear from the world, I'll be home. It's not written down and I don't remember the words, but I know when I hear it, I'll have made it myself, I'll be home. A version I heard once in Leitrim was close, a wet Tuesday night in the Shanrelly bar. I had come for the session, I stayed for the vision and lore. The landlord called time, the music dried up, the grace notes were pitched to the dark. When the jukebox blared out, I had only 4 senses and he left me senseless. I'd no choice but to take to the road. In Grafton Street in November, I heard a mighty sound. A travelling man with a didgeridoo blew me clear to Botany Bay. The tune too far back to live in, but scribed on my bones. In a past life, I must have been a kangaroo, rocked in my dream time, caught convict ships coming o'er the foam. In the puzzle factory one winter, I was sure I was home. The talking in tongues, the riddles, the rhymes struck a chord that cut through the pharmaceutical haze. My rhythm, catatonic, I lulled myself back to the womb, my mother's heart beating the drum of herself and her world. I was tricked by her undersong, just close enough to my own. I took then to dancing. I spun like a dervish. I swear I heard the subtle music of the spheres. It's no place to live but out there in space on your own hung aloft the night. The tune was in truth a mechanical drone. I was a pitiful monkey jigging on cue. I came back to earth with a land, to rain on my face, to sun in my hair, and grateful too. The wise women say you must live in your skin, call it home, no matter how battered or broken, misused by the world, you can heal. This morning a letter arrived on the 9 o'clock post, the Department of Historical Reparation, and who do you blame? The nuns, your mother, the state? Tick box provided, we'll consider your case. I'm burning my soapbox. I'm taking the very next train. A citizen of nowhere, nothing to my name. I'm on my last journey, though my lines are all wonky. They spell me a map that makes sense, where the song that is in me is the song I hear from the world. I lay down my burden and sleep. The spot that I lie on at last, the place I'll call home. So thank you for your attention tonight, and I appreciate all of your wishes and the fantastic work that the translators have done, and the opportunity to hear them. Especially for me, the real gift of this evening is to actually hear poems in Japanese, and I will treasure the memory forever. So thank you.
素晴らしいポーラさんの朗読のリズム、楽しんでいただけたと思います。アイルランドの音楽と言葉のこうして合わさったリズム、音、十分に堪能していただけたかと思うんですけれども、それをもう一度活字で確認したいと思われる方は、今からポーラさんのサイン入りの翻訳詩集が どこでですので、もしご希望の方がありましたら、どうぞお買い求めください。それではどうも今日はありがとうございました。もう一度